Since the release of the final shape, prismatic build crafting has gone a bit stale. You have your Consecration Titans, Caliban Liar Hunters, and Getaway Artist Warlocks that you pretty much see everywhere. So I've been searching for new builds that would not only shake up the meta, but give me that same level of power fantasy. And guys, I've found it. Most people are familiar with Mask of Fealty at this point, but it's commonly been used with the classic Stasis Hunter kit or with tonic boosting shenanigans in Onslaught. But today, we're putting the exotic class items in the vault and bringing Mask of Fealty to Prismatic Hunter for one of the most busted builds I've used in a very, very long time. It's one of those rare builds that excels in every level of content, whether it's Grandmaster Nightfalls, solo dungeons, or raids with your friends. Mask of Fealty Prismatic Hunter will likely become the best build in the game when Consecration Titan inevitably gets nerfed. We have all 3 champion stuns, ridiculous ad clear thanks to our constant Transcendence uptime, and a gameplay loop that will leave you smiling the entire time. I'm above, and if you enjoyed today's video, a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. Now, let's get into it. So let's kick things off with Mask of Fealty, the centerpiece of today's build. This exotic helmet was newly introduced with Episode Revenant, and it's so much better than it sounds on paper. This exotic revolves entirely around stasis, specifically the Withering Blade melee ability, stating that melee hits and bounces create stasis crystals at the point of contact, while refunding a portion of your melee energy in the process. If you use Withering Blade to shatter stasis crystals on frozen targets, you'll release a spread of Withering Blades that absolutely decimates enemies even at 25 under power. As stasis was power crept by the other 3.0 subclasses, it was easy to dismiss just how good this exotic could be, especially with how strong Liar's Caliban class items are. However, this exotic turns Withering Blades into heat-seeking missiles that excel in all levels of content, at all ranges, and is far more flexible than Liar's Caliban could ever be, which makes it, in my opinion, the best Prismatic Hunter build in the entire game right now. So let's dive into the build. Starting with our super, you have a couple of interchangeable options here based on the activity that you're doing. If you want restoration at all times, or need ranged precision damage in a nightfall like the Corrupted for example, Golden Gun is the perfect option for you. The constant healing and raw damage output is definitely worth running, especially when you factor in the roaming super changes that benefit the cooldown of 3-shot Goldie. And if you want a tanky build that centers around damage resist, has powerful synergy with this episode's artifact mods, and has the ability to lock down massive groups of enemies, Silence and Squall is my personal super of choice, and it's absolutely god tier with this kit. Withering Blade is required to take advantage of Mask of Fealty, and we're going with the Dustfield Grenade for even more crowd control and dark transcendent energy. I also recommend Gambler's Dodge to restore our melee ability when dodging near enemy targets, which gives us even more shurikens to play with. Since Mask of Fealty thrives off stasis crystals and frozen targets, having an extra source of slow makes this build even better. And the best part is that both of these abilities feed perfectly into our first aspect, Stylish Executioner, which states that defeating enemies affected by elemental debuffs will grant you invisibility. This is a constant get out of jail free card, and when you combine this with the ridiculous amount of crowd control we have, you have a build with amazing survivability. Winter Shroud is our second aspect and synergizes perfectly with Stylish Executioner, as it allows our dodge to slow nearby enemies, giving us an extra source of slow that we can combine with our shurikens to constantly freeze enemy targets. This means that we can slow and freeze with every single one of our abilities, and anytime we kill them, we get invis for free. But the fragments are what really take this build to the next level. First up, we have the tried and true Facet of Purpose, which provides major survivability benefits based on your super type. So in this case, since we're using Silence and Squall, we'll gain Frost Armor stacks each time we pick up an Orb of Power. This caps out at 22.5% damage resist on Prismatic Hunter at the maximum ×5 stacks. Next, we have Facet of Ruin, which increases the size and damage of our stasis shatters. And when you pair this with Mask of Fealty and the fact that it spreads shurikens all over the place, it makes our stasis crystal explosions incredibly powerful. Facet of Blessing takes what this build build does best and turns it into an incredible source of survivability. This fragment allows our shurikens to start health regen each time we secure a melee final blow, and while we're transcendent, this also starts health regen for our allies. Next, we have Facet of Dawn, which provides radiant on powered melee hits, giving us a free 15% damage bonus and intrinsic anti-barrier each time we hit an enemy with our shurikens. And last but not least, we have Facet of Balance, which grants melee energy when rapidly defeating targets with light damage, and grenade energy when rapidly defeating targets with dark damage. This works extremely well with area of denial frames like the Velocity Baton, as the damage over time constantly feeds our melee energy and the light portion of our Transcendence bar. And while this is happening, Mask of Fealty does the heavy lifting for our grenade energy. One of the best parts about this build is the fact that it can handle all three champions intrinsically with just our abilities. We have Slow for overloads, Shatter for unstops, and Radiant to handle barriers. And it not only deals with champions, it absolutely demolishes them. With the amount of ability uptime we have, they honestly become an afterthought. This means we have a ton of flexibility with our weapon choices and can really focus our loadouts on feeding our Transcendence bar as much as possible, which you definitely want to do because when you pop Transcendence with Mask of Fealty, it genuinely feels like having a second super, especially when you pair it with this episode's artifact mods that are tailor-made for this build. First up, we have Authorized Mods Melee. This makes all melee-based mods cost just 1 point, which opens up additional slots for other important armor mods. Next, we have Killing Breeze, which allows rapid weapon final blows to give us a bonus to mobility, which is important because the higher our mobility stat is, the faster we regen our Gambler's Dodge that we can use to refresh our shurikens. Rapid Impacts is an obvious choice for area of denial frames that gives us increased reload speed just for using it, and we want to pair this with Concussive Reload for a free source of weaken every time we break an enemy shield or damage a boss or champion with our denial frame. And this actually has perfect synergy with Curative Orbs as well, which states that the first time you break a target shield, you generate an Orb of Power. And since we'll be relying on armor mods like Recuperation and Better Already to heal us up, this becomes an extremely powerful part of our kit. Next, we have Hail the Storm, which states that shattering stasis crystals, something we're doing constantly thanks to Mask of Fealty, releases shards of ice that damage and slow nearby targets and makes our stasis shards even better. We can then pair this with Brain Freeze, which makes frozen combatants emit a slowing fog around them for even more crowd control. I think you're starting to see why Mask of Fealty is so strong right now, and it gets even better with our armor mods. On the helmet, we have Heavy Ammo Finder, Void Siphon to make Orbs of Power when using Velocity Baton, and Hands-On to gain bonus super energy on melee final blows. On the gauntlets, I went with Heavy Handed to generate Orbs of Power each time we secure melee kills, Impact Induction to feed our grenade energy when dealing damage with our shurikens, and Void Loader for Velocity Baton. On the chest, I went with your standard resist mods, and on the boots, I went with Recuperation and Better Already to heal us up every time we pick up an Orb of Power. Though Facet of Blessing is great for health regen on melee final blows, we won't always be able to do this, so having a second way to consistently heal makes our survivability even better. And since this build revolves around our melee, I also went with Invigoration to reduce our melee cooldown each time we pick up orbs as well. On the class item, I went with Outreach to reduce our melee cooldowns when using our class ability. You may think this is redundant with Gambler's Dodge since this already refunds one of our shurikens, but we can carry 2 of them at any given time, which means we're always working towards getting our shurikens back. I also went with Special Finisher to feed my Velocity Baton if I ever needed it, and Powerful Attraction to pick up nearby Orbs of Power when we dodge to not only heal us, but proc all of those cooldowns as well. And that's it! You now have everything you need to destroy endgame PvE. This build is easily the strongest power fantasy I've felt on Hunter since pre-nerf Lucky Pants, and as always, the dim link to this build can be found down in the description below. And if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to smash the thumbs up and subscribe for more content like this in the future. I'll also be trying out Path of Exile 2 on stream later this week, so if you guys are looking to build craft in a different game, feel free to come hang out with us over at twitch.tv/above. Anyways guys, that's it from me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace!